board that often. So I'll start out with that. I'm not going to go in any depth in this, and that's another thing. There's going to be all charts and graphs and numbers. So that's for the smart guys at our agency. I'll be talking more just in general. But I did want to talk about this a little bit. There are some things that we did have to do that the water board has been directly involved with that I think you all are probably aware about. And I'm not going to get into the details on this because I think you all know more about it than I do probably about this task force. But there was that wasn't supposed to be animated. We'll get it all in there. There was a multi-agency effort. When I say agency, it was actually I remember we had some midstream companies. There was oil and gas and others in the room, but putting together, trying to get that hydrogen hub. There's going to be up to four of those, I guess, coming out federally funded. And we were looking to propose to be part of that. Where we came into that was just the water aspect of that, right? If you're going to have different facilities for doing hydrogen, you're going to need to know where the water is. And when we look at water, we were developed. The Water Resources Board was created in 1957 after the drought of record. The droughts were so bad that we needed to figure out how much water do we have, like groundwater and surface water, and we need to permit that. And that had never been done at that point. So that is why we were formed. And so that's where we come into play is not only is there wet water there, but is there legal water there? Is there water there to be permitted? So we did come up with it using the water plan, which is my project. We do have all that information out there throughout. We have 82 different basins that we divided up our data in, and we can show you, where water is available. And then we project that out for the next 50 years. And so that's what we did on that one. So, there it is. Yeah, 50-year supply. Okay. Jake was kind of talking about this, and I knew Jake's face when I saw him, and that's where I met him, I guess, I used to be in those meetings as well, just I wasn't there all the time, but we would have monthly meetings at OCC, and Secretary Teague at the time got that started. And so we were part of that. I didn't want to do this job. I really didn't, when they came to us, and I don't know, we kept thinking this is an OCC thing. Why do I got to do this? But it turned out to be one of the coolest projects I got to be a part of, because it was, I got to know a lot of people from a lot of different areas that we don't usually work with. And it was such a fascinating thing. And it all happened, of course, in 2015 and 16 when the earthquakes became such an issue. So before I go into the Produced Water Working Group, why we became part of it, you may have heard of, if you deal with water at all, we have a water conservation program that came out of the legislature put it together, but kind of it was a result of the 2012 water plan. And the idea was the legislature set up a goal that we wanted to use no more fresh water. We had a 50-year projection. So by 2060, we wouldn't use any more fresh water than we do today in the 2010 data set. And that was the idea behind it. And what that really means is, part of that legislation said, but we're not going to hurt economic activity. So that means we got to come up with ways to do reuse, to conserve, to be smarter about water, right? Of course, there were all these great ideas came out of it. We had a big team that worked together from from agriculture, from OCC was there, of course, DEQ and others were all there, and industry. And unfortunately, it wasn't funded. However, we got a lot of mileage out of this project as far as every time a legislator wants to talk about water, they always throw the Water for 2060 Act in there as their legislation. And it has gotten us a lot of mileage in that way. A lot of the studies and the different things, the programs that we'd hoped would come out of it didn't come into reality. But I think we've still got a lot of mileage out of that anyway. So, and we still use it today. And there it is right there. Yeah. So our total in 2010 was 1.8 million acre feet of use. And then we're projecting by 2060, 2.4 million. Basically, we need to cut it by about a third. And so that is the goal. And the numbers are looking pretty good. We are working on that right now. So the next water plan comes out in 2025. So I have consultants helping me, the same ones we had in the 2012 plan, helping me put together the numbers, and they're looking at our water use data and so forth, and they're looking pretty good on that. So they do not want me giving any numbers out because they don't feel good about it yet. So, but we will. I'll have something soon to kind of present to you. So, okay, so what was the produced water working group? Was, again, Secretary Teague started this. It was kind of his idea of how can we make, right now produced water is a huge liability. Are there some ways we can make it an asset? And so that was what we were looking for. And these were kind of the options we had. Oil and gas can make it clean brine. We can reuse for other industries, can look for brine, desal, of course, and then forced evaporation was something. There were some different organizations, I guess, entrepreneurs. Man, I got a ton of them. We all did. OCC got sick of hearing it too. I think all the people calling us with black box ideas on how they could solve this problem. But it was a tough problem. It was really a tough problem a tough nut to crack. As many of you may know, oops, I'm going to go back. The mist line, was 150,000, 200,000 parts per million TDS was not uncommon. That's tough. With a barrel, 20 barrels of water to 1 barrel of oil was also common. You're dealing with big, long distances as far as trucking or piping. And of course, fracking and so forth, those are always moving sites, moving targets. So it was hard. And we really, at the end of the day, well, I've got some numbers here that moved off of there, but it should be the number we were trying to beat was about $1.09 in the stack and scoop. At that time, looked like per barrel was what the disposal cost. I think that is not including trucking. Let's see. Yeah. Anyway, the $1.09, as I recall, was the number we were trying to beat, and that was really hard to beat that. As far as treating desal, whatever we wanted to do was a tough one to beat, and we didn't beat it. And when we get our Q&A, I want to talk about where we are today. I'd like to hear you all tell me where that is today, if you all know, because I'm interested in that conversation of what you think we got us there. But what did come from it was we did get some legislation on it. They did suggest we do more investigations, and we did. We did fund a study on that evaporation idea. Didn't get us there. We still have authorities to research further needs. We do have a symposium, if you don't know about it. I think there's a produced water group out of OSU, and we've worked with you guys as well to do a couple of symposiums. Kevin Wagner at OSU with the Oklahoma Water Resources Center was kind of heading that up, along with, I guess, Jason Vogel, I think, and we may have another one of those. It was just the folks doing. There were people from OU and OSU and elsewhere that were presenting their latest findings and their work on treating produced water. There was the Continental Resource CR had their facility, and Newfield at the time also had a facility. The Devon Energy one, they were working a deal with Oklahoma City to use their treated wastewater instead of fresh water. That didn't, I don't think that ever came to fruition. Not sure on the Chesapeake and White Star. I do remember White Star was very active at the time. And they started trying to put together some kind of network ideas. I don't think a lot of that came to fruition. You guys might know more than me on that, but my understanding, as I thought, basically, they reduced the amount of injection, right? And then I think we moved off to the scoop and stack, which has a lot less water, right? There wasn't that high ratio. So that was, I think, what kind of solved more of it than anything else for us. So, the one thing we did have is an incentivization came out of that, and it was working at the legislative level. Was Stack and Barnes. What is I can't think of his name right now, but anyway, they did put together Senate Bill 1875 came out. Bud Ground worked with that, and Terry, I can't think of Terry's last name, but he's an attorney, he works with oil and gas a lot. They put together some for the mineral owners, an agreement and so forth for that identified what the responsibilities were for each side of that. So it would make it worthwhile for industry to do some recycling, and there wasn't a problem, such a big problem between them and the mineral owners. So, and we can talk about that later if anyone has questions. I can maybe say a little more about that. But okay, so water treatment and energy. I don't know how many of you all know about all this. May all be very common knowledge to you all, but the big deals with water and where we are looking at is treatment and the energy of that. water treatment has an enormous energy cost. This is Oklahoma City just sent this to me last night. So, we have Oklahoma City is a lot of our water comes from Atoka, from the Atoka area. We also have some from Canton Lake. I think you hear about that when they take water from there. Hefner, Overholser, Draper are all more buckets than anything. They don't really have a watershed that collects the water. That usually comes from elsewhere. And one of those is Atoka Lake, and that's pumping uphill. So there's the cost. The average is $5.2 million in electricity just to pump all that up here. I highlighted in 2013, it was 8.6 million. So, I mean, it's a very, very expensive thing to do. And so, yeah, saving water saves energy. And so what this is all about is where can we find places to collaborate, to come up with better ideas. Saving water saves energy, and saving energy saves water. We'd like to see both of those things happen. And I guess part of why I'm here today, when I talk a little bit more about what my project is, if you all have ideas, thoughts, we don't think about it at the water board. We really don't think about a lot of this stuff as much. It would be really helpful to have your perspective. I've got my cards here. Love to hear ideas about where we might be able to work together on some different things. And by the way, I guess I shouldn't skip over on the produced water project. So that idea with Kyle Murray, and then Carl finished this out, and Nick, we were looking at the water quality aspects, and we were going to make a layer of that. We may still do that, right? Over the state as to what the water quality aspects of produced water are and those findings. But there are other possibilities that we could look at. We are looking at treatment possibilities. We paid OSU to do some work on finding what are the constituents within produced water. There may be some other ideas as well. Happy to talk to you about that and how we might be able to make that part of the water plan. And again, I'll talk a little more about that later. So. Leak detection program. So DOE actually funds this through our Department of Commerce, but water treatment plants, wastewater plants, water treatment plants, when they produce their water, especially in the smaller towns, they have a hard time keeping up with the demands that they have. So many demands from so many directions, and not a lot of ratepayers, right, to pay for incredibly expensive infrastructure. And there is no real assistance. The ratepayers pay for it all. There isn't a lot of grant money. There's not a state or even federal money to help these small communities out. So when they have leaks, and it can be 20, 30, some of them up to 60% of their water is actually just being lost within the distribution system and elsewhere. So by repairing that, of course, that reduces their workload and saves electricity, saves energy, right? Cooling stations as well. We do work with OG&E and others. They have large generating plants that have the Sooner Lake is just a big, huge. There's a big recycling thing, just running water through for cooling stations. Where we can reduce the need for electricity, that's less cooling has to be done, less water. Now, a lot of that water is returned back to the system, but it does reduce their requirements for how much and how often they have to use water, making more available for other uses. Energy efficiency I was talking about how there aren't a lot of grants. There is some money on our state revolving fund. So the water board, one of the things we do is loan money. A lot of that is some of it's state money, some of it is federal money. But those federal grants have extra dollars in there if a system wants to use high efficiency pumps or lighting or all kinds of things that they will do that's energy efficient. A lot of that can be through the federal program. It can be paid for, at least in part. 750,000 barrels. That's what my memory was when I just did that from memory, but that was what I recall when I was working in the Produced Water Working Group, was about what it would take to frack one well. We would love to see that not be fresh water, and that was what our goal was. Can we find ways to make that brackish water, to make that be recycled water. That's where the new field and the continental resources systems were great, except of course it's such an issue with moving that water around is such a problem. That reminds me though, when I was talking about where we could collaborate, one of the ideas that, I love the Texas BRACS program. You all may be familiar with that, where they found, large reservoirs of brackish water that's available, that they actually use for different systems, and they like blend it with drinking water or what have you. Love to look and see if we could do that here. If there were large reservoirs, if we could locate large reservoirs of brackish water, that would be fantastic. And so maybe that's something where we could work together on those kinds of things. I think I've covered most of that pretty good, so I'll move on. So another thing about water is becoming so important now. A lot of our hydro dams, we have worked with GRDA, has hydro electric dams, and one of the jobs that I've had was funding some of the projects so that we could do some assessments for GRDA. Is it smarter to sell that water as water, or to run that through the dam and make electricity out of it? And that's a big question, right? That is a big question. And it's an important thing to consider. We've seen Lake Powell. I just Googled these. I knew they were problems, just found these on the websites, but Lake Powell may quit generating. They projected potentially in 2023, Meade in 25. One in Northern California is already shut down. It's a real consideration. So it is an issue. So state water planning. When you all called and asked me to do this, we don't think about energy at that level. Like some of the other planning things, we are really thinking 50 years out and how are we going to get there? What are some of the things we need to do? One of the big ideas is ASR, aquifer storage and recovery. I was just talking to Jake today. All the best lakes have been built. They were built in the 60s. We can build more lakes, but we're not going to build our way out of our water demand needs in the future by building more lakes, because the best sites have been built. And in fact, those are silting in, and dredging is not a very practical way to clean out a large lake. So ASR, aquifer storage and recovery, may be an answer. That's another place where perhaps OGS and others could help and be a part of that. We'd love to hear that. But those are the kinds of things we're thinking about. And there may be things on the energy side of things that would be a great idea that we're just not thinking of. And again, I'd love to hear your ideas if you're interested in talking about those kinds of things. Okay, so quickly, how much time do I got, Nick? I got 8 minutes. So we're gonna have Q&A after this, right? Yeah. So okay, I will go through this as quick as I can, but I did want to tell you what the water board is and let you know a little bit. I think some of these things I'm going to focus. We have a bunch of geologists that work at the water board, so I'll try to focus more on the groundwater side of things. So the state water plan is what I do. I look at all of these different things, but basically we were built for permitting water use, and so that means we've got to know how much water is out there. We got to know how do we allocate that to people, permit that out, right? So that's kind of a big part of it. We do water well drilling, we do the licensing, and we do the training programs. We want people that are out there that are doing, water well drilling, that they're doing it right. We want to protect those systems, or the aquifers. We also do water quality monitoring around the state, dam safety, and we got a first flood plan ever starting right now. So that'll be done about 2025 as well. And then we loan money to we do about 60% of the wastewater plants in the state, and DEQ does does the drinking water side of that. And so we're all part of that. We work closely with DEQ. We're the bank, and then they do a lot of the work directly on getting it out there and working with the different water treatment systems. Okay, I put a disclaimer down here. I didn't talk to legal before I made this, so it's not perfect, but I think I'm pretty close. I'm being recorded, right? So I want my disclaimer in there. Okay, so I got in there about the groundwater and surface water permitting. So what that means is Yeah, we had to come up with those different permitting systems. Groundwater basins, that's looking at maximum annual yield. So there's 22 major basins in the state, both alluvial and bedrock. And so we are doing studies on those and coming up with what are those maximum yields that can come out of those. And that's looking down at 5,000 parts per million TDS. That's not, I mean, it doesn't go to the base of treatable water, although we got some new authorities that came out in recent years, so that we can do 10,000 down to 10,000, but it has some different rules and regs, and you got to complete those wells differently. Surface water, we have people all over the state gauging and we have a watershed model that figures all that out and calculates that, and then we permit those. And then water use reporting. So water use reporting, we have a database of that. People report in every year. They're required to do so, but we don't meter it. Like, other than what comes off of water treatment plants, they have to be metered for the Safe Drinking Water Act. They're part of that through EPA and so forth. So DEQ does get accurate numbers, or we hope they're accurate numbers through that. I think they are, but a lot of the other stuff is it's the honor system. I think people do their best, but they may not have meters. So there's a lot of it's just not as good as we'd love to see it be. We do collaborate with the USGS and put together our water use reports. A lot of you are probably familiar with those. They used to come out every 5 years in a book form. Now it's all online. You've probably seen that. And we model all of that. We license and I'm telling you about the well drillers. We'll skip past that. We negotiate interstate stream compacts, and we do the ambient monitoring all over the state. So what do we not do? We don't fund projects. So I can't say, yeah, we got this really cool pipeline. We're going to move from here to there, move water from one side of the state to the other, or we know there's a problem in this town, so we're going to go build something to help fix it. We don't do any of that kind of stuff. Texas has some, I love what Texas has. Is I'm jealous sometimes about, they've got a bottom up. They do it regionally. They have plans, and then those are accepted by that region. And then all the regions come to the state, and the state accepts those and so forth. And I think it works very well for their funding and getting things coordinated between themselves. We can't consider groundwater and surface water interaction. So by law, groundwater is permitted one way and surface water is permitted the other way. And we do not look at the two like they are connected by law. We can't consider environmental flows. So right now we permit water. If it's available, we permit it. There have been discussions for a lot of years about the possibility of doing, considering, do we want to leave some water in the stream? There are some exceptions to that. We can't deny a permit. Also, if you meet the 4 points of law for stream water and 5 for stream water and 4 for groundwater, then you get a permit as long as you meet all the requirements. We do have a groundwater monitoring and assessment program that came out of the last water plan. The legislature funded that, and so that might be something of interest. It's online. We have that. It's done. They do it on a 5-year rotation. That's what the different color codes show you, the different groups in which they do those. Maximum annual yields. I did want to just let you all know that. So when we do annual, you think of a maximum annual yield, it's not a sustainable thing. It was designed back when we first started doing this back in the 50s and through the 70s, that we were looking at the lifespan of it. If you were to permit every square mile of over a given aquifer, and what you give it, 20 to a 50-year lifespan for that. So I guess I don't have time to really get into the details of that, but I did want to explain that to folks, because a lot of folks don't know that, don't understand that. I should say that there is one place where we do look at the connection between groundwater and surface water, and that's sole source aquifers. And that's the only one in the state right now, is the Arbuckle Simpson. That's where all the Turner Falls and the Chickasaw National Recreation Area. We do, with their springs and artesian wells and so forth. We do look at that and consider that in the permitting and use system. Okay, groundwater studies, all of those groundwater studies I was telling you about, they're on our website. If you want to see them, you can download them and look at them. There's 22 of them, but we're not done with all of them. I think we have like 12 or 13 completed, but there's a bunch of them ongoing. Should be done in the next couple of years, actually have all of them done. USGS does a lion's share of that work, and we assist in that. Okay, last thing, let's see what I want to tell you about before I got to go. I kind of told you all of that stuff. Groundwater irrigation districts did come out of that. Here's the big picture right here. I'll just go to this one. I'll get this slide done and I'll quit. So the issues in Oklahoma, and this is just everybody. The issues we have are in my mind are two things, and this is what I do is we have a series of work groups that we are starting right now, small, with people that we consider that are experts in their area, or like in the crop irrigation, we're talking to a lot of farmers in specific areas. There is definitely groundwater is going down in certain aquifers that are being heavily used, certainly up in the Panhandle and down in the Southwest or all over the West. There used to be a time when they didn't want to talk to us about their groundwater levels. There is no metering, and we don't meter, and we're not moving to meter that. And that's something we have to be very clear about. We're not doing that. However, their attitudes are changing as they get to 200 and 300 feet deep now for all of their wells. There's some of them are realizing that they may not have an irrigation farm for their children and grandchildren, is what they're saying. That's what they're telling us. So there are groups of farmers that would like to make some changes. We're talking about how could we do that? How could they do that as a local group, not as us, the state coming in and telling them how to do it, but how could they work together? And so we had these groundwater districts legislation worked up so that they could maybe form their own and regulate themselves. That's something they've done in Texas. That's a possibility. And last thing I want to talk about was infrastructure needs. So that's $17.4 billion by 2060. That was the number came out in 2012 water plan after we did our assessment. That was for towns of less than 3,300 people. They're not going to come up with $17.4 billion, and they're not going to do that even in 50 years. It's not going to happen. We want to talk about it this time. Last time we went out, we did the assessment, we figured those numbers out, but this time we're not only going to bring the new numbers, we're going to update these numbers, whatever they come out to be, but we're going to come up with some solutions in some of the worst spots, spots where we find that, I guess I'm going to call them poster child systems that really need help. And we're going to have conversation in those areas. What can we do to solve those problems? And we're going to bring together the folks, not just the towns themselves, but decision makers, with that state senators, state representatives, what have you. Are there ways we could work together to come up with some solutions for these folks? The next water plan doesn't come out till 2035. I don't think this can wait till 2035 to solve this. And so we really want to see if we can have the conversations. We're not going to tell them how to do it. That's not the intent. The intent is for them to come work together, to talk together, to bring people together and come up with the solutions themselves. So that's our challenge. That's what this is all about. And that's what makes this, to me, a very interesting, it's an interesting job, and I enjoy doing it. So I think that's probably it. I know I'm out of time, so I'll stop there and we can catch it. Those are our different work groups that we've got going on right now. And I threw energy in there. Maybe there could be something on that topic. So, all right, I'll let you go.